Welcome to the deep dive. We are peeling back the layers on a fascinating stack of sources today, focused entirely on the fundamental constraints and, well, the powerful levers of intentional living.
Yeah, exactly.
If you ever felt like your actions are kind of driven by invisible forces, this deep dive is really your blueprint. We're examining the actual structures,
Hmm.
the architecture, you could say, that shapes who we are, whether we're conscious of it or not.
That's exactly right. Our mission today is to move past just, motivation and really dive into the mechanics.
Okay.
We're unpacking what we're calling the architecture of influence, understanding these three sort of non-negotiable forces that determine our behavior.
Big forces.
First, the immutable constraint of time. Second, the vast networks we all inhabit. And third, crucially, the environments we choose to design. Or maybe the environments we don't choose but end up with anyway.
Interesting. So going beyond just surface knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. Seeing how these elements combine and, importantly, compound to shape who we become and, how you can intentionally manipulate them for, well, transformation.
Okay, so when you're building any structure, you have to start with the foundations, the constraints.
Hmm.
And in life, that constraint is the one thing we absolutely cannot influence, time itself.
Right.
The sources kick off with a perfect framework for this, citing Maya Angelou. She said, "Since time is the one immaterial object which we cannot influence, neither speed up nor slow down, add to nor diminish, it is an imponderable, valuable gift."
That quote, it's just the ultimate cognitive reframe, isn't it?
It really is.
We spend so much energy trying to manage time. You see it everywhere. Books,
Yeah.
apps, as if we can somehow, bend those 24 hours to our will.
Yeah, find that magic hack.
Exactly. But time is the singular, immutable container. It's the constraint within which all life unfolds. You just cannot bargain for a 25th hour.
Right.
You can't hack the speed of the Earth's rotation. You can't earn more of it. It just moves forward, always, relentlessly.
And that acceptance that time is simply this immovable river, it's profound because it immediately forces us, or should force us, to shift our focus entirely.
Completely.
If we can't control the flow of the river, maybe we should stop agonizing over managing the minutes, right? And start rigorously examining what we can control,
Yeah.
our existence within it, the quality of our moments, the investments we make with that finite time.
Exactly. And the consequence of ignoring this constraint, well, it's feeling overwhelmed, perpetually hurried. Sound familiar?
Oh, yeah. The default state for many, I think.
But if we accept time as the fixed dimension, we realize that time management as a concept, it's actually, well, it's flawed.
Well,
Because the actual lever we possess isn't managing time itself, it's focus allocation and energy management.
okay, focus and energy.
How am I intentionally deciding to invest my finite moments? Am I auditing my time investment against my stated values, or am I just letting, external environments dictate my moment-to-moment existence? Email, notifications, the next urgent thing.
Right, letting the environment push you around.
This acceptance, it frees up so much mental energy we waste fighting this unwinnable battle against the clock.
It sounds like the first act of architecture, then, is just acknowledging this unchangeable framework, accepting the container.
Precisely.
Now, if time is the container, we have to talk about the medium in which we operate. That brings us to the second major component of our architecture.
The network.
The network. Yes.
And we start this section by dismantling what one source calls a very dangerous idea.
Yes, we absolutely need to destroy this idea that we exist as isolated individuals making isolated choices. Seth Godin, he brilliantly labels this the desert island mythology.
Desert island mythology, I like that.
It's this dangerous fiction, right, that our interactions are simple dyadic transactions. The sources define it as the belief that it's just, quote, only you and me. And every interaction we have is right here, right now.
Like a little bubble.
Exactly. It's the idea that your choices exist in a vacuum, only affecting the two people directly involved. Convenient, maybe, but wrong. And that is seductive, isn't it? If we believe we're on a desert island, we might feel we don't need consistency. Maybe we can treat people or situations as temporary resources.
Exactly. You see the danger.
So why is this mythology so profoundly wrong from an architectural perspective? What's the reality?
Because it fundamentally blinds us to the actual structure of our social existence. The reality is that every single person in your life is connected to countless others, like a web.
Okay.
When you interact with someone, you are not just interacting with them in isolation, you're engaging with an entire, complex, interconnected system. This is what we're calling the network reality.
So let me see if I get this. If I make a casual commitment to someone, maybe I say, yeah, I'll send you that link later. Or perhaps I'm inconsistent in my word.
Right.
That inconsistency doesn't just stay contained between us two.
Not at all.
It could potentially affect the reputation, the reliability of that individual in their broader community, and, by extension, my own standing.
That's precisely the everyone they know is in the room with you effect.
Yeah.
Your behavior ripples. It goes outwards through their relationships.
Wow.
If you prove reliable consistently, you enhance their social capital. And your own, of course. But if you're unreliable, flaky, you diminish both.
So every decision we make, even small ones, is intrinsically linked not just to our immediate desires, but to our standing, our connections, our community health, really.
Yes. Our choices are always about systems, not just simple diets. Always.
And let's bring time back into this picture. You mentioned interactions today don't just vanish.
Yeah.
How does this network reality get compounded by that constraint of time we talked about?
The temporal dimension is crucial here. Think about it. We carry every conversation, every kindness, or every slight forward with us through time.
Like baggage or assets.
Exactly. Trust, for instance, is not built in a single moment. It's compounded by consistent action across time. An act of integrity today. That builds equity in your network that can pay dividends for years.
Right.
Conversely, a breach of trust. That's like taking out a loan with incredibly high interest over that same period. You are constantly actively building or dismantling your network and your reputation across time. It never stops.
This makes that concept of interdependence feel less like some, feel-good philosophical idea and more like an actual architectural requirement. Like we are structurally required to connect and be mindful of these connections.
That's a great way to put it. The sources quote Theo Von here saying, "We are the keys to each other's locks."
Keys to each other's locks.
It speaks to a necessary function, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Our human existence is fundamentally structured by this web of relationships. Imagine a great cathedral.
Okay.
The load-bearing walls, they rely on each other, right? If one wall fails or weakens, the entire structure is compromised.
The integrity is lost.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Similarly, if you choose isolation or maybe just chronic inconsistency, you are actively compromising the integrity of the very network that defines human experience.
But I have to push back here a little. If interdependence is the architecture, and every single choice I make ripples out like this, honestly, that sounds exhausting.
It can feel that way, absolutely.
How do you maintain individual boundaries? How do you prevent burnout when you realize every choice, even a small mistake, could have these huge cascading network effects?
That is a critical question, and it's a real challenge. The answer, perhaps paradoxically, lies in the nature of trust itself.
Trust again?
Yes. The sources state it beautifully. Trust creates peace. The paradox is that the very thing that creates the pressure, this interdependence, is also the thing that provides the solution.
How does that work?
Well, if you establish consistent, trustworthy behavior over time, you actually reduce the need for constant vigilance and repair within the network.
So you're building a buffer.
You gain peace because people know where they stand with you. They can rely on you. The system becomes more stable, less demanding of constant damage control.
So the consistency across time is the real key here. If everyone they know is essentially in the room, trust means you show up the same way today as you promise, implicitly or explicitly, that you will tomorrow.
Precisely. And achieving that consistency, it often requires vulnerability. Trust requires opening ourselves up to genuine connection, showing our true intentions, and our capacity warts and all, rather than just putting on an isolated performance or trying to look perfect all the time.
So less performance, more presence.
Yes. It's the willingness to actually be known. When we act with integrity consistently, it stabilizes the entire architecture. It provides the peace necessary to function effectively within that complex structure without burning out.
That makes perfect sense.
Okay.
So acceptance of time as the container leads to intentional focus. Acceptance of the network as the structure leads to consistent, trustworthy behavior.
You got it.
Now we need to transition from these sort of external systemic forces
Right.
to the internal individual levers of change, behavior itself.
Right. And to understand how we actually change, or why we often don't change, we have to turn to one of the most elegant and clarifying equations in social science. It comes from Kurt Lewin, B equals F of P, comma.
B equals F of P, comma, E. And as the source mandate reminded us, keep it simple. Get rid of the big words.
Yes. Let's do that.
So the formula is Behavior, that's B, is a function F of a person, P, and their environment, E. It seems so straightforward on the surface.
It does.
Yet it feels fundamentally disruptive to how most people, including myself probably, approach personal change.
It is disruptive because most people most of the time focus almost entirely on P.
On the person.
Yes, the internal factors, willpower, motivation, personality, discipline. They think, oh, I just need to be a better person, or I need more discipline, or I need to try harder.
The pull yourself up by your bootstraps idea.
Kind of, but Lewin's formula shows us unequivocally that our behavior B is profoundly shaped by the external factors, the environment. Profoundly.
Okay, so walk me through that. If I fail to achieve a goal, let's say I wanted to start exercising regularly and I don't.
Yep, common example.
Instead of immediately calling myself lazy or undisciplined, focusing on P,
Right, the self-blame route.
I should first audit my environment, E, to see if it was actually structured to support that behavior.
Absolutely. That should be the first step. The environment is this silent, constant force. It's the sum total of influences we allow in or create around us.
Like what, specifically?
Oh, it's everything. The physical space, the colors, the moods, the objects within easy reach, the default settings on our devices, the people we spend time with. All of it.
Yep.
If you struggle with consistency in, say, that exercise goal, the path of least resistance, which is usually dictated by your environment, is probably winning out over your intentions.
Can you give an example?
Sure. If you want to write a book, B, but your designated writing space, E, is also where you watch Netflix, scroll social media, and pile up mail.
Uh-oh. Sounds familiar.
Then your environment is primarily built for distraction and consumption. It's undermining the desired behavior, writing, regardless of how determined the person P feels internally at the start of the day.
This really challenges the idea of willpower being the most important thing. So where does personal agency fit in? If E, the environment, is so dominant, is P even relevant? Are we just puppets of our surroundings?
No, not puppets. P is relevant because P is the architect.
Ah, P designs E.
Yes, P is the driver that designs E. Think of willpower, part of P, like a muscle. It's powerful, but it fatigues quickly, right?
Definitely,
Yeah.
especially by the end of the day.
But environmental design, E, that's like building a machine. Once you build it well, it runs almost automatically, guiding your behavior with much less effort. Agency resides in the deliberate choices you, P, make to structure E.
Okay, so you use your limited willpower not to force the behavior directly, but to build an environment where the behavior happens more easily.
Exactly. You reduce the need for that constant, fatiguing willpower. If I want to eat healthier, B, I don't rely solely on the willpower P to resist the cookies sitting right there on the counter every single time I walk past.
Because eventually you'll probably grab one.
Eventually, willpower fails. Instead, I use my agency P to eliminate the cookies from the immediate environment, B, in the first place, or at least make them really hard to get to. Design the friction.
Okay, let's get even more concrete. Give some contrasting examples of how E subtly, or maybe not so subtly, manipulates behavior.
Okay, think about our digital environments.
Yeah.
If your phone is structured for instant gratification, every app notification is turned on, social media is right there on the home screen, one easy click away.
The default for most phones out of the box.
Pretty much. Then your behavior B will almost inevitably drift towards distraction, fragmentation, and consumption. It's the path of least resistance the environment offers.
Makes sense.
If, however, you use your agency to deliberately design that digital environment, maybe notifications are ruthlessly pruned or turned off entirely, productive apps are front and center, distracting apps are buried in folders or deleted, maybe the phone charges overnight in another room.
Creating friction for the unwanted behavior.
Yes. Then your behavior B shifts dramatically. The environment now supports focus and deep work rather than undermining it.
And the same logic applies to physical health, right?
Absolutely. If your gym clothes are laid out the night before, E, your water bottle is filled, your running shoes are right by the door, you've lowered the activation energy, the friction required for the desired behavior. B.
You make it easy to say yes.
Conversely, if your healthy food is visible, prepped, and easy to grab, E, but your unhealthy snacks are hidden away, maybe in an opaque container on a high shelf that requires effort to reach.
You're using the environment, using friction to shape your likely outcomes.
You are the architect. The environment is constantly, silently either supporting the person you aspire to become or actively undermining that vision. It's this ongoing, subtle negotiation between P and E.
So understanding this equation, B, F, P, E, it means moving from self-blame, what's wrong with me,
Mm-hmm.
to architectural critique.
Exactly. Instead of what's wrong with me, the first question becomes what's wrong with my surroundings? Or, more constructively, how can I redesign my surroundings to support the behavior I want?
That is such an essential shift. And once we accept that E, the environment, is this powerful lever, well, the conversation naturally turns to our role as the deliberate designer of that environment.
Right. This moves us directly into the architect role.
Yeah.
And the sources, interestingly, give this idea special, almost sacred importance when discussing the role of parenting.
Parenting. How so?
Because a parent is essentially given the initial and incredibly profound environment construction mandate for another human being. You are literally building their starting world.
Wow, yeah. That perspective carries weight. Which brings us to Horace Mann's powerful declaration. He said, "No man has a right to bring up his children without surrounding them with books."
It's a strong statement.
It is,
And-
and reading it through this BFP lens, it's not just an attack on the ill-informed or anti-intellectual. It feels like a profound architectural statement about designing E.
It absolutely is. Man recognized way back then that to raise critical thinkers, to raise intellectually curious people, B, you cannot simply rely on genetics, part of P, or occasional lectures about the importance of reading.
The do as I say, not as I do approach doesn't work.
Rarely. You must actively design the ecosystem of intellectual curiosity. And for man, the book was the tangible proxy, the key artifact for intellectual presence and inquiry in that environment.
But why specifically books? Why not just say access to information online or educational TV shows?
That's a good question in our modern context. I think because books, particularly physical books, are unique environmental structures. They signify intention. They demand dedicated focus. They require patience. They reward sustained attention in a way flickering screens often don't.
They're visible models of deep thought.
Exactly. They are artifacts of deep thought sitting right there in the environment. So, to raise a reader, B, a parent must consciously design the environment, E, of a reader. Make reading the visible, celebrated default.
And the sources really emphasize that this requires specificity in the design. It's not enough just to have a few dusty books hidden away on a shelf somewhere.
No, passive ownership isn't enough.
They must be displayed prominently. Good ones, silly ones, short ones, long ones, used ones, new ones. They need to be objects of interest, part of the landscape.
Absolutely. They need to be accessible, visible, integrated into the living space. The environment, E, must constantly suggest and support the desired behavior. Reading. Make it easy, make it attractive.
And beyond just having them there.
The engagement with them needs to become a way of life, not just an occasional treat. The sources mention trips to libraries, browsing independent bookstores. These need to become recurring rituals, normalized activities within the family's environment.
So the environment becomes an active participant?
Yes, not just a passive backdrop. It actively participates in shaping P, the child. The child ideally becomes a reader, not primarily because they are inherently disciplined or motivated, P alone, but because the world they inhabit makes reading the easiest, most celebrated, and most visible choice available.
That level of granular detail in the parenting example is really powerful. It makes the principle concrete. Now, let's extend that exact same granular specificity to self-architecture, moving beyond parenting to how we design for ourselves.
We absolutely must. We have to internalize this principle and become the conscious architect of our own environment. And this starts, as Jim Rohn apparently noted, with the most immediate environment we inhabit.
Which is?
Our own body, Ron said. Take care of your body. It's the only place you have to live.
Framed that way, our physical health. It's not about vanity or obligation or someone else's expectations. It's about maintaining the structural integrity of our central residence, our primary environment.
Exactly. If your body is the only house you truly get, how are you maintaining its foundation? Its plumbing, its energy systems. Thinking about health this way shifts it from a should to an architectural necessity for everything else.
In this architectural application, it extends outward from the body to every area of our lives, doesn't it?
Every single one. Consider our home environment. E. Is the kitchen table designed primarily for conversation and focused meals? Maybe even focused work? Or is it constantly cluttered, piled high, basically inviting distraction and making focus a high-friction activity?
Or think about our workspaces. E. A deliberately designed environment might mean setting up a ritual. Maybe you only open certain demanding software like coding or writing software in a specific location or at a specific time.
Yes. Thereby training your brain to associate that physical spot or time cue with deep focus. You're building environmental trigger.
And crucially, we have to apply this rigorously to the often invisible architecture of our digital world.
So important. Do you actively curate your social media feeds to provide intellectual challenge, insight, maybe inspiration? Or are you just passively allowing the algorithms to feed you whatever generates the most engagement, which is often outrage or mindless consumption?
Every time you click follow or mute someone or silence a notification, you're acting as an architect.
You are building your mental furniture with those clicks, designing the informational environment you inhabit.
And finally, this loops back beautifully to Section 1, our social circles. They are a key part of our environment.
A huge part. We are the architects of our immediate social environment. If we choose to surround ourselves with people who are constantly learning, growing, challenging themselves, that environment will inevitably pull our own behavior upwards.
The opposite is also true, presumably.
Unfortunately, yes. We are constantly designing ourselves through these environmental choices. Physical, digital, social. The environment is the mechanism through which our intentionality or lack thereof gets expressed.
So the takeaway is, whether we're conscious of it or not, the environment E will inevitably shape our behavior.
AB.
It's always happening.
So the key is to grab the architect's tools and design E before E designs you by default.
That's it, exactly. Design before you're designed.
Okay, that's a really powerful call to action. We've established the structure, immutable time, the vast interconnected networks, and this crucial lever of environmental design through BFPEPE. But how do we know if we're actually using this lever effectively? How do we measure the impact of our architectural choices? Is it just a feeling?
That brings us to the ultimate behavioral test. This section really cuts to the core of personal evolution and what it truly means to learn something. David Senra offers a perspective that's incredibly clarifying here.
Okay, what's the perspective? He says essentially, learning is not gathering and knowing more and more information. Learning is using new information to change our behavior. Real learning is changing our behavior.
Oh, wow. That hits hard.
Doesn't it?
It draws such a necessary distinction between, say, reading a source like listening to this deep dive right now, and actually integrating the knowledge in a way that matters.
Exactly.
We've all done it, haven't we? Read a brilliant book on productivity or health or communication. Nodded along. Felt super inspired.
Highlighted passages, maybe told a friend about it.
Yes. And then gone right back to the exact same habits the very next day or this week.
That is the critical difference the sources point to, the difference between information and transformation.
Information versus transformation.
That information accumulation, the reading, the listening, the intellectual agreement, if it happens without any subsequent action, without any change in behavior, well, the sources define it bluntly as merely intellectual entertainment.
Ouch. Intellectual entertainment.
It occupies your time, makes you feel smart, maybe gives you good cocktail party conversation points, but it results in zero actual behavioral change. If your behavior B remains unchanged, then according to this definition, you haven't truly learned anything practical about how to optimize P&E, you just consumed information.
So true learning must manifest in action. It's only evident when you actually make a different choice in a real situation. When a new habit actually sticks, despite the friction. Or when you choose an altered response when faced with an old trigger.
Yes, that's the proof. That's the evidence that the architecture is working, that the design is having an effect.
And that transformation, that real behavioral change, it almost always requires facing difficulty, doesn't it? It requires courage.
Absolutely. When we try to implement a new behavior, B, the old environment, E, might resist. Our old neural pathways, part of P, might scream in protest, triggering fear or discomfort, urging us to just give up and go back to the easy way.
The path of least resistance again.
Right. And the sources remind us that in those moments, those crucial moments of friction, you have to consciously call upon your heart's courage to continue.
That moment of friction, where the old, comfortable behavior tries to reassert itself against the new, intentional one. That's where the real learning is tested, isn't it?
That's exactly the proving ground. We often confuse intellectual understanding, oh, I know I should do this, with behavioral mastery. I actually do this consistently, even when it's hard.
And mastery only happens in that difficult space, where the new, sometimes challenging behavior actively replaces the old, comfortable default pattern.
Think about the friction involved in deliberately redesigning E. It takes courage to actually throw away the junk food or install the website blocker, or maybe have that difficult conversation needed to restructure a social dynamic that's holding you back.
It's almost always easier, in the short term, just to go back to the default environment.
Always. But that courage to push through the discomfort, to stick with the redesign, is what separates mere entertainment from real transformation.
And crucial to sustaining this often difficult change is the humility to ask for help, which loops us right back to the power of the network we talked about earlier.
Yes, it connects perfectly. Simon Sinek reminds us quite beautifully, I think, that we don't have to know all the answers and we don't have to pretend that we do. People are always willing to help if we are humble enough to let them know we need it.
That feels profound in this context. The courage to change your own behavior has to be matched by the humility to admit you don't know everything, that you need support from the network you inhabit, which is part of your E.
It is. If you consciously structure your social environment to include people you trust, people who model the behavior you seek, people who can offer guidance or just accountability, their strength, their knowledge, it becomes part of your machine.
So real strength isn't pretending you have it all figured out.
No. Real strength often lies in admitting weakness or uncertainty and strategically leveraging the wisdom and structure offered by others in your network, using the network as part of your designed environment.
And all of this behavioral change, this transformation through courage and humility, it's all governed by that inescapable time constraint we started with.
Always circling back to time.
We are not building these new structures, these new behaviors overnight. John Wooden, the legendary coach, articulated the consequence of this time constraint perfectly. He said, it takes time to create excellence. If it could be done quickly, more people would do it.
That puts it so well. Excellence, whether it's in sport or craft or character, it's not an instant state you achieve. It's the slow, steady accumulation of designed environments and resulting behavioral investments be compounded relentlessly over time.
So the time constraint isn't just a limitation, it's almost the authenticator of the achievement.
That's a fantastic way to think about it. Yes, if it were easy, it wouldn't be valuable. If they were fast, it wouldn't really be excellence, would it? The difficulty of the work, sustained over time, is what makes it rare. And the time constraint is what makes the final result, the transformation, so valuable and resistant to erosion.
The compounding effect across time, allowing small, consistent architectural adjustments in E to result in massive behavioral transformation B down the line.
That's the power.
Okay, this comprehensive synthesis, time, networks, environment, and transformation through behavioral change, it feels like it brings us to a final, necessary understanding. Living intentionally means navigating certain inherent tensions.
Exactly. Intentional living, design living, it's not a smooth, straight line. It's not about finding a perfect static state. It's defined by navigating a series of, let's call them, productive tensions or paradoxes. We have to kind of embrace these four key contradictions to really thrive within the architecture we've been discussing.
Okay, 4 tensions. Let's start with a relationship that really defines the entire framework we've built. Time versus focus.
Right. The core tension here is unavoidable. We cannot control time. It's the immutable container of life. Yet simultaneously, time shapes absolutely everything we do.
So how is that a productive tension?
The paradox is that the acceptance of this immutable reality, I cannot control time, is precisely what frees us to be fully present and effective within it. We stop wasting energy trying to win the unwinnable time battle.
And we start winning the moment battle instead.
Exactly. We start winning the focus battle in a present moment. This acceptance allows P, the person, to focus completely on the quality of our moments and, crucially, on the intentional design of our environments that shape those moments. The cage of time, once you accept its bars, actually becomes the structure within which true freedom of focus can be found.
That's a powerful reframe. Okay, the second tension. This speaks directly to our interconnectedness and our personal responsibility. Network versus agency.
Yes. We are undeniably interdependent. As Theo von said, we are the keys to each other's locks. We exist within these complex networks, yet at the same time, we are ultimately individually responsible for our own choices and actions.
So the tension is, does being part of a network reduce my personal agency?
That's the common confusion, or maybe the common excuse sometimes. But the sources argue compellingly for the opposite. Interdependence doesn't diminish agency, it multiplies it.
Multiplies it. How?
Because of that ripple effect we talked about. Since every choice you make ripples outward through the network, affecting the environment and possibilities of those connected to you, your agency becomes far more consequential, not less. The stakes are higher.
So the tension is in holding both truths, maintaining your personal responsibility, your agency, while simultaneously consistently honoring the structure and the interconnectedness of the network.
Precisely. You have to choose deliberately, always aware that the impact extends far beyond just your own immediate self.
Okay, that makes sense. The third tension feels almost philosophical, but you argue it's practical. Light versus darkness. The sources state, in order for light to shine, darkness must be present.
This is a deeply practical truth, I believe, not just a poetic metaphor. Think about it. Contrast creates meaning. If every single day were easy, if every effort succeeded instantly, if there was no struggle, how would you even define success?
It would lose its meaning. There'd be no contrast.
Exactly. Without struggle, without confusion, without failure, without the darkness, there is no triumph, no mastery, no real clarity, the light, the darkness of difficulty, of challenges, of setbacks. It's the necessary environment, the necessary contrast that makes the light of excellence, of achievement, of understanding both visible and valuable.
So if transformation B were completely effortless, we wouldn't actually learn anything truly meaningful. The struggle is part of the learning.
The struggle is the transformation in many ways. The darkness makes the light possible.
Powerful. Okay, and finally, the fourth tension. This one ties back neatly to stability within the network. Trust versus vulnerability.
Yes. We noted earlier that trust creates peace. It stabilizes the network, reduces friction. But, and here's the tension establishing and maintaining, that trust requires opening ourselves up to risk. It requires vulnerability.
So you can't have the peace without the risk.
Essentially, no. Trust is a long-term investment built over time that requires consistent, small, and sometimes large acts of risk-taking in the present. That risk is vulnerability.
Examples.
Being vulnerable might mean admitting a mistake instead of covering it up. It might mean asking for help when you feel like you should know the answer. It might mean being honest about your capacity or limitations instead of overpromising.
Things that feel risky in the moment.
Exactly. The tension is choosing to embrace that short-term risk, that discomfort of vulnerability, knowing that it is the only pathway to building the incredibly valuable long-term asset of trust. If you shield yourself completely, if you're never vulnerable, you never build deep trust, and you forgo the peace, the stability, and the architectural support that a high-trust network provides.
Wow. Okay, so navigating these four tensions, time focus, network agency, light darkness, trust vulnerability, is key to living within this architecture intentionally.
It seems to be the ongoing work.
This has been a really complete architectural analysis. We started with the foundational constraint time, the container. We moved through the inescapable structure of the network. We unpacked the core equation of behavior, BFUFEP, highlighting the power of environmental design. We established that you cannot stop time. You cannot truly exist in isolation, but you can deliberately design your environment, E, and commit to real behavioral learning, changing B.
And every conscious decision you make is part of that design.
No.
The structure of your digital feeds, the book you choose to display prominently on your coffee table, the quality of the conversation you choose to invest in, the deliberate habit you work to cultivate.
It's all architecture.
It is all concrete acts of architecture, and you're building not just your own life, your own experience, but you are simultaneously contributing to the environment of everyone connected to you.
And crucially, these choices compound across the network and across time.
That compounding effect is key.
The gift of time, then, isn't more minutes, but the ongoing invitation to assume the architect role, to consciously build environments that shape us toward our best selves, and to transform fleeting information into enduring wisdom through actual changed behavior.
I think the crucial takeaway here is the acceptance of inevitable influence. We will be shaped by our environment and our networks. That's just structural reality. It's unavoidable.
Right.
So the definitive question isn't whether we'll be shaped, but whether we will take the reins and shape them intentionally. Building forward means accepting that excellence isn't some final destination you arrive at. It's the continuous, iterative accumulation of design environments, deliberate choices, and concrete behavioral transformations, all compounded across time.
So the final thought for you, the listener, to mull over.
Knowing you are the architect always of your own environment, and knowing that your choices ripple outward through your network and forward through time, what specific element of your environment, maybe physical, maybe digital, maybe social, what one specific thing are you going to deliberately redesign starting today?